Celeste Whitcomb laughed when she handed me the keys to her late father's broken yacht. "Since you like fixing hopeless things, Mr. Cole, consider it yours," she said, while half the marina crowd smiled into their champagne glasses. All they saw was a black single dad in oil-stained work pants standing beside a dead private yacht nobody wanted to tow. They didn't see what I saw beneath the peeling inspection sticker near the secondary hull plate, the edge of a serial number somebody had tried too hard to hide. That old boat was not junk. It was missing from a will, buried under lies, and worth more than every joke they made that afternoon. Before I tell you what that number revealed, drop your city and local time in the comments, and if stories about fathers, dignity, and hidden truth mean something to you, stay with me. Because that yacht was about to expose a $9 million secret. My name is Darius Cole, and I have spent most of my life listening to engines breathe. Not car engines, marine engines, diesel blocks tucked deep under deck panels, salt-eaten fuel lines, bilge pumps coughing in the dark, old transmissions that complained before they failed. Boats tell you things if you're patient enough to hear them. Most people only notice the shine above the waterline. I made my living crawling beneath it. My shop sat on the edge of the harbor in coastal Maine, where the wind smelled like rope, cold rain, and diesel fuel. It wasn't much to look at. One bay, a rusted lift, a parts shelf that sagged in the middle, and a coffee maker that sounded worse than half the engines I repaired. That morning, before Celeste Whitcomb turned me into a joke, I stood outside my shop looking down at my hands reflected in the black water beside the dock. Oil in the cracks, salt under the nails, old scars across 2 knuckles from a starter motor that kicked back on me years ago. Those hands had paid rent, packed lunches, fixed boats for men who called me Buddy because they couldn't remember my name. They had also held my son Elias when he was born too early, small enough that I was afraid my own breathing might bother him. His mother left before his first birthday, Snatstana. She didn't slam doors or make a big speech. She just said she wasn't built for this kind of life. And one Tuesday morning, she was gone. Elias was 10 now. Quiet, sharp-eyed, always building little wooden boats from scraps he found behind my shop. He kept one on our kitchen windowsill, a crooked thing with a repaired crack along the side. He called it Lucky, though it had never touched water without tipping over. "Boats don't have to be pretty to float," he told me once. I wanted to believe him. That was the thing about Elias. He still had hope, but he didn't throw it around carelessly. He studied the world first, like hope was something you had to test for leaks. That afternoon, while I was closing up a repair invoice, he looked at the marina flyer on my desk. "Whitcomb auction today?" "Charity event," I said. "Rich people, charity or real charity?" I looked at him. He shrugged. "There's a difference." He wasn't wrong. I had been hired to inspect a few engines before the auction. Simple work. Temporary work. The kind a small shop takes because school supplies, winter heat, and boat insurance don't care about pride. But pride was exactly what I carried into Whitcomb Harbor that day. And by sunset, that pride would almost make me walk away from the one broken thing I was supposed to notice. Whitcomb Harbor had 2 kinds of docks. The first kind belonged to working people. Splintered pilings, cracked rubber bumpers, crab traps stacked beside fuel drums, men in rain jackets drinking burnt coffee from paper cups before sunrise. The second kind looked like it had never met weather. That was where the auction was held. White tents lined the private marina lawn. Brass lanterns hung from cedar posts. Servers moved between guests with silver trays of champagne and lobster bites so small they looked embarrassed to be from Maine. The yachts sat polished in their slips, all chrome rails, tinted glass, and names painted in gold leaf. Then there was the one at the far end. A 68-foot Whitcomb custom yacht with a dead generator, cloudy windows, cracked teak, and gull stains down the stern. Her name had been painted over badly, but if you leaned close, you could still see the ghost of the old letters beneath the white paint. Maribel. I knew that name before I knew why. Celeste Whitcomb stood near the auction platform in a white coat that probably cost more than my outboard lift. She had her father's eyes, or at least the kind of eyes I remembered seeing once across a storm-dark dock years ago. Tired blue. Careful. Hurt behind money. Preston Vale stood beside her with estate papers tucked under one arm. He was the kind of man who smiled like signatures were already finished before you picked up the pen. When Celeste saw me, she looked past my shoulder first, searching for somebody more important. "You're the mechanic," she asked. "Marine engine mechanic," I said. "Darius Cole." Preston's smile twitched. "Mister, Cole inspected a few lots for us. Small vessel experience. I believe." I let that sit. A man in a red sailing jacket laughed under his breath, not loud enough to be challenged. That was the trick with people like that. They didn't throw stones. They set pebbles where you had to walk. The auction moved fast. Smaller boats, donated equipment, a week at some island house. Then Celeste stepped up and gestured toward Maribel. "My father had sentimental attachments to hopeless things," she said, and for just a second, her voice nearly broke. Preston touched her elbow. The break vanished. "So," she continued, brighter now, too bright, "in his honor, I'm giving this one to someone who appreciates lost causes." The crowd turned toward me. Celeste held up the keys. "Mr. Cole, since you like fixing hopeless things, consider her yours." People smiled into glasses. One woman actually clapped once, then stopped when nobody joined her. I looked at Maribel's helm through the dirty glass. Near the wheel, under a strip of peeling varnish, I saw two faint initials carved into the wood. Arthur Whitcomb. Celeste saw me notice. Her face changed for half a breath, like she had forgotten those letters were there. Then Preston said, "A generous joke. Really." And everybody laughed the way rich rooms laugh when they're checking who has permission. But Maribel didn't feel like a joke. She felt like somebody had left a door cracked open. I almost left the keys on the dock. That's the honest truth. A man can tell himself he doesn't care what people think, but public laughter has a way of finding the boy inside you who once got told he didn't belong. I had Elias to feed, a shop note due, and no room in my life for a dead yacht somebody handed me like a punchline. But then, the wind shifted, and Maribel knocked softly against her lines. Wood and fiberglass make different sounds when a hull has been neglected. This one sounded tired, not ruined. So I climbed aboard. The deck flexed a little under my boots. Salt had crusted along the cleats. The teak needed sanding. The cabin smelled like mildew. And the battery bank under the aft bench had bloomed with white corrosion. Anybody looking from the dock would have seen junk wearing an old, rich man's name. I opened the engine hatch and found twin diesel blocks sitting low in the belly like two sleeping animals. The first engine had a cracked impeller housing and a fuel line dry enough to split if you looked at it wrong. The second had oil seepage around the valve cover, but the dipstick told me the block had not run hot. No burnt smell, no metal glitter in the oil. The generator was dead. Yes, but not destroyed. Somebody had let Maribel look worse than she was. That bothered me. I checked the bilge pump wiring, then the raw water intake, then the transmission mounts. The mounts had surface rust, but the bolts were original and aligned. A careless owner ignores that. A man who loves a boat keeps certain things right, even when everything else starts falling apart. Arthur Whitcomb had loved this boat. I knew it before I could prove it. From the dock, Preston called, "Mr. Cole, I wouldn't waste too much time. Donation paperwork can be voided if the vessel is refused." There was a little smile in his voice. I climbed back onto the stern platform without answering him. That was when I saw the sticker. It sat near the secondary hull identification plate, just under the starboard rail where most people would never crouch low enough to look. A fresh marina inspection decal, clean and bright, stuck over metal that should have been weathered like everything around it. Fresh sticker, old yacht. That combination never sits right. I rubbed the edge with my thumb. The adhesive was still soft. Maybe a week old, maybe less. My pride told me to walk away. Let them keep their joke. Let rich people rot inside their own games. Then I thought of Elias and that crooked wooden boat on our windowsill. Boats don't have to be pretty to float. I pulled out my phone, took a picture, and marked the spot with a strip of blue tape from my tool bag. Behind me, Preston stopped smiling. That was when I knew Maribel had more to say. That night, I brought the photo of Maribel's cereal plate home like evidence and trouble in the same pocket. Elias was sitting on the floor by the coffee table, sanding the side of Lucky with a strip of paper so worn it barely had grit left. The little wooden boat still leaned to one side, but he had filled the crack with glue and clamped it between two soup cans. "You keeping the rich people's yacht?" he asked without looking up. "Don't call it that." "What should I call it?" I took off my jacket and hung it over the chair. "A problem." He blew dust from the tiny hull. "You fix problems. Some problems come with lawyers. Then fix it quieter." I looked at him, and he gave me a small smile. Not joking exactly. Testing the room. That was Elias's way of hoping without admitting hope had walked in. I sat across from him and took Lucky into my hands. The repaired crack ran crooked along the side, a pale line against darker wood. "This ever gonna float?" I asked. "Maybe." He shrugged. "Maybe not. But if I quit before testing it, then I don't get to blame the boat." That one landed harder than he meant it to. I had spent the whole drive home telling myself to leave Maribel alone. Let Celeste and Preston fight over their dead man's paperwork. Let the yacht sit where it had been placed, half mocked and half buried. I didn't need trouble. Elias didn't need his father dragged into some estate war between people who could hire 5 lawyers before breakfast. But my son was watching me turn away from something true because it came wrapped in insult. A father can teach fear and call it wisdom if he's not careful. My phone buzzed. "Preston Vale?" I let it ring twice, then answered. "Mr. Cole," he said, smooth as varnish over wrought. "I hope you've had time to think clearly." I thought clearly at the dock. I'm not your enemy. People who say that usually want something. A soft laugh. Fair enough. I want unnecessary confusion avoided. Ms. Whitcomb is grieving. Her father collected boats the way lonely men collect regrets. That vessel has no meaningful estate value. Then why cover the plate? A pause. Not long, long enough. "Inspection decals are placed by marina staff," he said. "Do not mistake maintenance details for legal realities." I looked at Elias. He was pretending not to listen, sanding the same spot on Lucky over and over. Preston continued. "Walk away from the vessel. Refuse the transfer. I'll make sure your shop receives preferred vendor consideration next season." There it was. Not a bribe loud enough to sound dirty. Just stability dressed up in nice words. I thought about winter bills, Elias's boots, the engine hoist payment. Then Elias set Lucky on the table between us. Boats don't know when people give up on them, he said softly. I closed my eyes for half a second. I'll be at the marina tomorrow, I told Preston. His voice cooled. That would be unwise. Maybe it was. But Lucky sat there with its crooked little repair, and for the first time, walking away felt heavier than staying. The next morning, I met Celeste at Maribel's slip before the marina opened. She wore no white coat this time, just jeans, a navy sweater, and sunglasses pushed into her hair like she had dressed before deciding what version of herself to be. Preston arrived 5 minutes later with a folder under his arm. "This is inappropriate," he said. Celeste didn't look at him. "Open the records." I started with what boats cannot fake. First, the secondary hull plate. I photographed it beside a ruler, then rubbed chalk lightly across the stamped grooves so the number showed clear WTC-6 8-MB-0417. Second, the port engine block. I lifted the access panel, wiped the grime from the manufacturer's stamp, and read the prefix aloud. Same production year. Same custom build batch. Third, the helm. The varnish was old and cracked, but under it, Arthur's initials sat beside Maribel's like a whisper carved by a man who never expected strangers to read it. Celeste touched the letters with 2 fingers. "My mother's name was Maribel," she said. Nobody answered. Preston opened his folder. Sentimental markings do not override estate documents. Arthur Whitcomb owned multiple vessels. This one was removed from active inventory due to deterioration. Removed by who, I asked. His eyes cut toward me. By the estate office. That means proper procedure. I pulled out my phone and showed Celeste the old service registry I had found through a retired Whitcomb yard mechanic. 1 entry, same serial number. Listed as private, non-transferable, held pending restoration. Celeste read the date and went still. That was 2 days before Dad died. Preston's face hardened. Your father was not well. He made irrational promises near the end. What promises? He breathed out through his nose, cornered now, but still fighting. He wanted that boat restored instead of sold. He talked about some mechanic from years ago, a man who fixed his engine in a storm. He said that man understood Maribel better than any broker ever would. I felt the dock shift under my feet, though it had not moved. Celeste looked at me. I saw the storm again. Arthur Whitcomb soaked through, holding a flashlight while I rebuilt a fuel pump with numb fingers, his hand on mine after, both of his wrapped around one of mine. Preston kept going. I protected the estate. I protected you. A $9 million asset cannot be handed over because a grieving old man romanticized a dockside repair. Celeste whispered, "You changed the inventory." I corrected it. "No," I said, "you buried it." The wind pushed Maribel against her lines. One soft knock, then another. Celeste lowered the folder slowly. Her face was pale, but her voice steadied. "What is she worth?" Preston said nothing. I looked at the exposed plate. "Restored," I said, "with provenance and original build records around $9 million. The joke on that dock died right there. But the question left behind was heavier than money. Who was Arthur trying to trust when everyone around him had already stopped listening? Preston asked to speak with me alone. That was how men like him worked, never in the open if the truth had windows. Celeste stayed on Maribel's stern, staring at the carved initials beneath the helm, so I followed Preston to the fuel dock where the morning gulls screamed over scraps and the harbor smelled like low tide. He stood with his back to the water. "You have no legal claim to that vessel," he said. I didn't say I did. Good. Then we can be practical. He opened his folder and pulled out a card. "Your shop is small. Your equipment is aging. I imagine winter months are difficult." I looked at the card but didn't take it. Preston continued, softer now. "Sign a statement saying you misread the plate under poor conditions. I'll recommend your shop for all Whitcomb Marine maintenance contracts. Engines, tenders, seasonal storage. You'll never worry about invoices again." For a second, I saw it. A new lift, Elias with boots that fit before the snow came. My shop lights repaired instead of flickering. A little room to breathe. That kind of offer doesn't arrive looking evil. It arrives looking like relief. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A photo from Elias. Lucky floating crooked in our kitchen sink, one side low but still above water. Under it, he had typed, "It didn't sink yet." I closed my eyes. Hope can be a dangerous thing when you've spent years teaching yourself not to need it. Preston mistook my silence for weakness. "You're a mechanic, Mr. Cole. A good one. I'm sure. But this is estate law. People like you get hurt when you wander into rooms built for other people." I opened my eyes. There it was. Not shouted, not ugly enough for bystanders to notice, just the old wall, polished smooth. Celeste had come closer without either of us hearing. She stood near the fuel pump, her hands tucked in her sleeves. "Darius," she said. Not Mr. Cole. Darius. She didn't say, "Please help me." She didn't say, "I don't know who to trust." She didn't say, "I made you the joke because I was angry at a dead man and you were standing close enough to receive it." But I heard all of it. I handed Preston his card back. "I don't take gifts meant to make me small. I take the truth wherever it's been hidden." His face changed. Just a little. I walked past him and gave Celeste the photos, registry copy, and the service marks I had documented. Then I signed my name under the statement as witness, not owner. "Tell me honestly, what would you have done? Would you have taken the contract and walked away? Or risked everything for a truth that wasn't even yours? Put it in the comments. I'll be reading." Behind us, Maribel rocked once against the dock, like she was waiting to see who would claim her story next. The estate review happened 3 days later in the upstairs room of the marina office. It wasn't a courtroom, but it felt close enough. Long table, cold coffee, framed photos of Whitcomb yachts on the walls. Celeste sat at one end with her hands folded so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. Preston sat across from her with 2 attorneys beside him and a face arranged to look offended. I sat near the window with my folder of photos, service stamps, registry copies, and one dirty rag wrapped around the peeled inspection sticker. They started with paperwork. Preston's attorney spoke first. Words like clerical variance, informal vessel designation, non-material discrepancy. Rich people have a language for making simple things sound too complicated for honest folks to touch. Then the independent marine surveyor stood up. He was an older man named Heiress, with sunburned cheeks and glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. He held my photo beside his own inspection sheet. "The secondary plate is original," he said. "The engine stamps match. The helm carving is consistent with Whitcomb custom records. This vessel is not the listed donation scrap. This is Maribel." The room went quiet. He turned another page. "Restored market value. with provenance intact, is estimated between $8.7 and $9.3 million. Celeste closed her eyes. Not because of the money, because her father had left something real behind, and somebody she trusted had made her laugh at it in public. Preston tried one last time. Arthur was emotionally unstable near the end. He made symbolic requests. I made hard decisions to preserve the estate. Celeste opened her eyes. You preserved your control. That was the sentence that finished him. No shouting, no dramatic collapse, just the sound of a man losing the room one face at a time. By the end of that afternoon, Preston Vale was removed as trustee pending legal investigation. The marina developer deal was frozen. The altered inventory was sent to probate counsel. Celeste did not celebrate. She looked smaller somehow, like truth had taken weight off one shoulder and placed it on the other. Outside, she handed me a leather logbook with Arthur Whitcomb's initials stamped into the cover. He mentioned you, she said. I didn't open it right away. My name. No, her mouth trembled once. He called you the mechanic who listened. That did something to me I wasn't ready for. When I got home, Elias was waiting by the sink. Lucky floated crooked in a mixing bowl, one side patched with too much glue, but still above water. I set Arthur's logbook beside it. Elias touched the cover gently. Is it worth $9 million? I looked at that little wooden boat, then at my son. Some things are worth more before anybody appraises them. Has a small thing ever changed the direction of your life? Tell me below. Sometimes one hidden number, one old note, or one repaired crack can bring the truth back to the surface. Restoring Maribel took longer than anybody expected. That was how real restoration worked. People like to imagine one dramatic reveal, one clean coat of paint, one engine roaring back to life like it had only been sleeping. But old boats make you earn every inch. Salt hides in screws, rot hides under varnish, regret hides in paperwork. Celeste funded the restoration, but she did not stand over us like an heiress protecting an investment. Most mornings, she arrived in jeans and old sneakers, carrying coffee for the yard crew. She asked questions, real ones. Then she listened to the answers. Elias came after school whenever homework allowed. He swept shavings, labeled parts, and kept Lucky on a shelf near the workbench where everyone could see it. The little wooden boat still leaned to one side, but it had become a kind of mascot for the whole dock. One afternoon, Celeste brought Arthur's logbook down to the shop. There's one page I didn't show you, she said. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened it. Arthur had written about the storm, about a young mechanic on a freezing dock who refused extra money and said, just get home safe. He never wrote my full name. Only D. Cole. Then one line near the bottom said, Maribel should be restored by someone who knows what it means to bring a thing back without owning it. I read that sentence 3 times. What does that mean? Celeste asked. I don't know. I said, that was true. Maybe Arthur meant the boat. Maybe he meant his daughter. Maybe he meant himself. Some promises don't explain themselves just because the person who made them is gone. Months later, Maribel touched open water again. Her cereal plate was cleaned, polished, and left uncovered beneath the starboard rail. No sticker, no paint, no shame. The engines ran deep and steady under my feet, and Elias stood beside me with both hands on the rail, grinning like the whole harbor belonged to the wind. Celeste didn't give me the yacht. I didn't ask for it. Instead, she turned one of the old Whitcomb slips into a training dock for young mechanics who couldn't afford marine school, not a charity performance, a working dock, tools, mentors, engines, mistakes, second chances. Elias placed Lucky beside Maribel's helm before the first training day. Just in case she needs a friend, he said. I laughed softly. That evening, after everyone left, I stood on the dock with my son while the sun lowered behind the masts. Maribel rocked gently against her lines, the cleaned serial number catching the last gold light. And Lucky sat beside her, crooked, patched, and still floating in its own way.